Hi, Gigi Facebook community. My name is Erica Horton. I am the president of Growing Generations and one of the four owners. I'm here today to talk to you guys about insurance and how insurance intersects with surrogacy. Admittedly, probably not one of the most thrilling topics, but a super important one to understand as you embark on the surrogacy journey. And don't worry, we're here to help, but like to sort of demystify how this all works. So I thought we would start by giving a quick overview of the four types of insurance that we consider during the surrogacy process. And then today we're going to spend time talking mostly about the first one of those four. So in the surrogacy process, we look at four types of insurance. The first is what I would call maternity insurance, and that insurance is designed to cover maternity care, OB appointments, any specialist appointments that a surrogate may need to see during the course of her pregnancy, and then the cost of the delivery. The second type of insurance we consider is newborn insurance. You know, once baby or babies are born, they are covered by their parents' insurance. And for our clients who do not live in the US, we have to think about how we're going to handle insurance for those newborns. The third type of insurance is like a life insurance policy for the surrogate. Touch wood, we have never had to use one of those policies, but it's important. You know, with anything in life comes risk. Surrogacy is no different. Pregnancy is no different, but we want our surrogates and their families to feel secure. So all surrogates will have a life insurance policy purchase for them. The final type of insurance that we consider is what I would call IVF cycle complication insurance. Every surrogate is going to be going through the IVF process, which means taking fertility medication. And we want to be sure that if anyone has an adverse reaction to any kind of medication or IVF procedure, that they have access to getting the appropriate care needed to deal with that. So there's a small supplemental policy to cover those types of complications. So those are our four major types of insurance. But today, let's spend some time talking about the maternity and delivery insurance, which is arguably one of the most important of the four. So there are three different ways that we handle this. The first is using an insurance policy that one of our surrogates already has. So, you know, most people living in the US have health insurance. Most people have health insurance through their employer. So if you have a job, your company likely provides you or provides your spouse health insurance for you and your family. If not, perhaps you have an individual policy that you've purchased on your own directly from one of the big insurance companies, maybe like Blue Shield, Cigna. There are many depending on where you live in the country. And so if you do have insurance, one of the first things we're going to do as you apply to be a surrogate with us is to analyze your insurance so we can understand whether it's possible to use that policy to cover the pregnancy and delivery expenses. It's not always possible. Sometimes insurance companies say, hey, if you're a surrogate, we don't cover the pregnancy. And if that's the case, we know we can't utilize that policy. If we can utilize the policy, the intended parents that the surrogate is matched with will be covering the out-of-pocket costs associated with the policy. So you probably know that every time you go to the doctor, it's usually not totally expense-free. There may be a copay, there may be what they call a co-insurance, which is where you pay a percentage of the bill up to a certain amount. The intended parents will be covering those expenses because basically our surrogate shouldn't incur out-of-pocket expense as a result of being a surrogate. The great thing about getting to use your own insurance or the surrogate's insurance policy is, you know, she's probably already familiar with it. She knows which doctors she likes that are in her network, what hospitals are near her that are in her network. So it's convenient. It also happens to be one of the lower cost options because we're not looking at paying a premium to obtain the policy because the policy is already there. The number one tip I have in this category is don't assume that your insurance covers surrogacy. You want to be really clear with the insurance company, and a lot of times if you look at an insurance contract, if you log into your user portal on your insurance website and you look for your insurance contract, there's probably some vague language about surrogacy, but there might not be any language at all. And you don't want to interpret that silence or vague language as a, yes, we cover surrogacy. Believe me, the last entity you want to be in a legal battle with is an insurance company, because they have lots of attorneys and they have lots of money to fight with. So we just want to go forward knowing, being really clear with the insurance company what our intentions are and making sure that it falls in line with what they will cover. The other tip that I would give when it comes to using your own insurance is always go to an in-network doctors and in-network facilities or hospitals. The reason for that is if you go out of network, there's this sort of new phenomenon that came around with the Affordable Care Act called balance billing. So what happens is, even if you have a great PPO type of policy that gives you a lot of flexibility, you can see whatever doctor you want to, doesn't matter if they're out of network. If your insurance pays that doctor the agreed upon amount and the doctor says, well, we normally bill more, they'll bill you for the balance. And we don't want that to happen, because then we don't have a limit on what the out-of-pocket cost could be if you're out of network. So we're going to be working with the surrogate and the intended parents. We're going to be doing routine checks during the entire pregnancy to ensure that the providers and the facilities that we're seeing or planning to deliver at continue to remain in network throughout the pregnancy. If a provider drops out of network, we can apply for what we call a continuation of care, so that we don't have to have a changeover in providers, especially late into a pregnancy. One other thing I like for people to know is insurance changes during pregnancy sometimes, and most of the time that's outside of anyone's control. So, if you have your insurance through your employer gets to decide who the insurance company is. You as the employee don't necessarily have a say. So if today you have Blue Shield and in December your company says, hey, it's time for us to renew our insurance contract, and they say, we're going to switch to Cigna. Cigna might not cover surrogate pregnancy. So there are some contingent insurance policies available to protect intended parents from financial exposure for those types of changeovers. So in every case, once we have an established pregnancy, we're going to do an analysis and we're going to say, okay, great, when is our delivery date? When could the employer possibly do a changeover in insurance? And we're going to assess whether there is any risk present and whether it makes any sense for the intended parent to consider one of those contingent type policies. Another way that insurance can change during pregnancy is a job loss. If a surrogate or her partner loses a job through which they have their insurance, we then look to Cobra. Cobra is a piece of federal legislation that allows people to stay in their group insurance policy even if they don't work there anymore. In order to stay in the group, you do have to pay monthly premiums. If the intended parent would like to continue to use that insurance, they will be responsible for the Cobra premiums to keep the policy. The second way we would handle maternity insurance for a surrogacy is through the Affordable Care Act. So many of our surrogates have their own insurance, but like I said, some of those policies don't cover surrogate pregnancy. So every November, December, and the first part of January, depending on where the surrogate lives, we're going to look to see if there are any available Affordable Care Act policies that the surrogate could enroll in to cover the surrogate pregnancy. It changes every year. So some years there are policies available in some states and some years there are not. So every year it's kind of a wait and see. Then we do a verification to make sure that policy covers surrogacy. We pick doctor and hospital that are in network, and then we're able to use that policy for the pregnancy. The final option we would look at is a specialty surrogate insurance. Lloyd's of London is the primary provider of these types of insurances, though I think AIG also offers a policy. Basically, the policy is specifically written only to cover surrogate pregnancy. So it's not like general health insurance. You know, if you have a broken toe, that's not really pregnancy related, so the policy isn't going to cover care for something like that, but it will cover care for OB appointments and delivery expenses. The other way that these policies are unlike traditional health insurance is they do have exclusions, which means, you know, if you have a medical history of a particular health condition, for example, you have hyperthyroid and you're on medication to regulate that, the insurance policy may say, we aren't going to cover any care or complication as a result of a thyroid issue. So those are just things to be aware of as you're considering which insurance makes the most sense for your particular surrogacy. Some of the most common questions we get on the intended parent side is, well, hey, why can't I use my health insurance to cover my surrogate's pregnancy? This is my baby. And unfortunately, the insurance world hasn't necessarily caught up to how surrogacy works. In surrogacy, intended parents are intending to be the parent from before the pregnancy is even established. So arguably, you could say that their policy should cover the pregnancy, but I have never found a policy that does, and I will be thrilled with the first insurance company who kind of takes that groundbreaking step to insure a surrogate if an intended parent has a medical necessity to use a surrogate. And that would be inclusive of LGBTQ families as well. So hopefully we'll see some progress in that arena, but as of today, that's not a reality, unfortunately. You know, the other thing I like for people to know is insurance can be a little bit intimidating. It can be overwhelming, confusing, and we're here to help. So we have several staff members here who have been working in surrogacy and how it intersects with insurance for many, many years. So you're not on your own. We're here to walk you through every step of the way, walk you through decision making, make sure you understand cost, make sure you understand risk, so your eyes are wide open and you can make the right informed decisions. If any of our folks watching have questions, feel free to pop in, ask any questions you were hoping to learn about today if I haven't already covered. There's no silly question. I've heard them all, although you might surprise me, so feel free to jump in with any questions. Since we have a little bit of time, I'd also like to talk a bit about newborn care and how do we handle that. For our intended parents who live in the US, it's pretty simple. Most of us have health insurance here in the US, so when our baby is born, we just call up our health insurance company and say, hey, I need to add a legal dependent. And the good news is in surrogate deliveries, the babies are always legal dependents of their parents from day one. The intended parent simply provides their insurance information to the delivery hospital, and the delivery hospital will bill the intended parent's insurance for all of the newborn care. Again, something that's very important is networks. Is the hospital in network for the intended parent's insurance? So as a new parent, like any new parent would, you'll want to make sure you know where your delivery hospital is. Is your delivery hospital in network? If it's not, is there another option? Or just having a clear understanding of what your financial liability is if you are out of network. For our clients who live outside of the US, newborn insurance is a bit more complex. So for singleton pregnancies, there are a handful of different options for insuring newborns. Lloyd's of London offers a newborn insurance product for singleton pregnancies only. Allianz Worldwide offers a policy that parents can buy for themselves, and they can add their legal dependent. The only caveat is you have to have that insurance in place for 6 months before you can add your legal dependent. So we work with all of our international clients in the very beginning of their process to make some insurance decisions. So if we do have a time clock we're working against, that we make sure we're getting those policies in place far enough in advance that they can actually be useful. And then there is the opportunity to pay cash. That opportunity does carry risk with it. You know, if a singleton baby is born early, and that doesn't happen very often, but if a singleton is born early and requires more than routine care, the medical costs here in the US can get expensive very quickly. In the very worst cases, I have seen medical bills beyond $2–3 million for one baby. So it's not a risk to be taken lightly, but certainly a possibility for those who wish to take it. There is a possibility in some places to obtain a child-only Affordable Care Act policy. There are very few of those opportunities, and again, they change year over year. So just because today there is a policy available in a certain area of the country doesn't mean that next year when your child is born that that same policy will be available. So we don't encourage intended parents to bank on that as a 100% guaranteed solution, but it is one we can talk through and look into based on where the surrogate is going to be delivering. So for twins, it's a little more complicated. Insurance companies are smart. They are not in business to lose money. So Allianz, Lloyd's of London, there are other major travel insurance companies like Bupa. Those are the three main ones. They have specific exclusion for multiple deliveries. They know that twins can be born early and are more likely to be born early and therefore have some significant medical bills, and they are not interested in taking that financial risk. So unfortunately, there is no guaranteed coverage for twin pregnancy. So we really strongly suggest that our intended parents who do not reside in the US consider trying for only a singleton pregnancy unless they are fully prepared to accept the financial risk that comes along with a twin pregnancy here in the US. There are a handful of intended parents who live overseas who are very lucky, who have access to national insurance that will extend to their newborns here in the US. We've had clients in the Netherlands have great success with that. A few clients in Germany have some success with that through private insurance. So I think the takeaway here is, especially newborn insurance for our clients living outside of the US, is pretty complex. And so we're going to do an assessment case by case so we can really make sure that we're providing all of the relevant options for that particular intended parent, because it can vary so wildly from case to case. And then the other thing I would say about newborn insurance is, again, and this sort of is the theme when it comes to insurance in general, is it's constantly changing landscape. So don't be surprised if 6 months into your journey there's some big new piece of information, but be rest assured that we will absolutely share it with you, and we will share potential solutions and different avenues to think about to make sure that your financial risk is mitigated as much as possible. And we get, especially for our international clients, it's intimidating. You know, most places in the world have socialized healthcare. You go to the doctor, your bills are paid. And so this whole concept can be pretty foreign, but we're here to help. So don't be afraid to ask what might seem like a silly question. We've probably heard it before, so don't be shy. We have a few questions here. Let's see here. So Kelly asked, How do you make sure the surrogate is not responsible for the OB and hospital bills? So that's a great question. There is a legal contract in place between all surrogates and intended parents, and that legal contract outlines financial obligations. So it states very clearly that the intended parent will take responsibility for any pregnancy-related care, whether or not it is covered by insurance. In addition to that, we also make sure that our clients fund their financial accounts to cover out-of-pocket expenses. So we have those funds on hand, and we're able to pay those medical bills right away. Now, every once in a while, we have a complicated case. So to give an example, we've had instances where a delivery occurs, hospital is in network, and then a surrogate gets a giant bill in the mail for like $20,000 and says, oh, we're denying this bill because the hospital was out of network. Then what we do is we work with our legal team to go through an appeals process with the insurance company. We provide all of the documentation that we have on hand proving that the hospital was in network right around the time of delivery. And we have a very, very high success rate with our insurance appeals. We also make sure to be in touch with billing departments because, you know, sometimes it's scary as a surrogate when you get a phone call that says, we're going to send you to collections if you don't pay this bill right now. Don't allow billing departments to push you around. If you're a surrogate who gets one of those calls, call us. We will help. We will call the hospital with you. We will explain the situation, and all of the time the hospital is willing to put the account on a temporary hold while we go through an appeals process. So as scary as it can be to get those kinds of calls, don't panic. We will certainly be there to help. Let's see here. So we have another question from Kale. Will Growing Generations work with everyone after the birth until all the bills are taken care of? That's also a great question. We absolutely will. So all of our intended parents agree that their financial account will stay open with us for 13 months post-delivery, which gives plenty of time for all of those medical bills to be processed and for final totals that are due in cash to be paid. There is a concept called timely billing. So hospitals and medical providers are required to bill insurance within a specified amount of time. Otherwise, that provider sort of forfeits the opportunity to be paid at all. So that, coupled with the fact that the account will be kept open, gives us plenty of time to get everything sorted out. I always recommend, especially for surrogates, don't ignore bills that you get in the mail and assume, hey, like I already sent that to Growing Generations one time. Sometimes, you know, hospitals make mistakes. Everyone's human and mistakes happen sometimes. So sometimes we send a check, they cash the check and they enter it in their system incorrectly and they keep invoicing the surrogate saying, hey, we haven't got payment. So again, anytime you get a bill, send it to us, we'll investigate it. If we say that we've paid something, 99.9% of the time we've paid it, and we call the hospital and find out there was just a data entry error and it gets cleared up. So again, like I said, don't panic, call us and we'll help get it taken care of. Your finance specialist can help, your case specialist can help. So we all jump on those issues pretty quickly because we know that they can be kind of stressful when they come up. All right, we have another question from Ruby. Do you need to know if your insurance covers surrogacy before you apply? No, you don't. We're going to check for you because we don't expect that everyone knows how to go through that process. So on your application to become a surrogate, we'll ask if you have insurance, and we'll ask, you know, what the name of the policy is and who you have it through, whether it's through an employer or a policy maybe you bought on your own. And then what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to provide us a copy of your explanation of coverage, EOC. It's an insurance contract. It's usually about 100 to 200 pages long. And it basically explicitly outlines what your insurance company covers and what they don't. As we go through our verification process, it sometimes involves reaching out to the insurance company in writing for some clarification. And once we receive an answer from them, we'll know whether we can use the policy. If we can't use the policy, don't worry. It doesn't mean that you can't be a surrogate. It just means that we need to look at alternatives and possibly look at either enrolling in an ACA policy if it's the right time of year and there happens to be one available in your area, or if not, one of those specialty products through Lloyd's of London that I previously mentioned. So there are lots of solutions. I would say that it's pretty attractive to intended parents to have a surrogate who has her own insurance because it can make things a lot less expensive for them and more convenient for our surrogates too. I mean, one of the kind of awesome fringe benefits is, you know, if your whole family is enrolled in your group policy through work and you go through a surrogacy, you're likely going to exhaust your entire out-of-pocket maximum via the pregnancy, which means, you know, if your kids need some medical care or, you know, one of the kids breaks their arm at soccer or something like that, you might not have any deductible left to pay. So that's kind of an unexpected fringe benefit of using your own insurance for surrogacy. The other thing to know is there isn't any real risk to the surrogate to use her own health insurance for the pregnancy. We don't put our surrogates in risky situations. So if your insurance company says they won't cover surrogacy, we never say, oh, well, let's just try to bill them and see if they don't notice. That's not fair to you because then you're probably going to have to deal with insurance companies rescinding payments. And so like we just don't mess with those kinds of situations and don't want to put our surrogates or intended parents through things like that. So we have time for a couple more questions. If there are any burning questions out there that haven't been asked yet, I'm happy to answer those. There are lots of resources for insurance for surrogacy out there on the internet. There are several insurance agencies that specialize in insurance for assisted reproduction. So this is sort of just a great baseline knowledge so you can go out there and do some searching and learn more. But again, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have specific questions. Even if you're not officially in our program as a surrogate or an intended parent, but you have questions about something insurance related, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to schedule a consult and give you more information to make sure that you have a good understanding of how to proceed with insurance in this process. So it doesn't look like we have any final questions, but if we find that there's more interest in topics like this, we can certainly do another live. So we're going to sign off for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be doing another live soon. So feel free to follow us to make sure you get notified anytime we're going to be doing a live session. Have a great weekend, everyone.